See my screen?
Yeah.
All right. Welcome. I definitely appreciate y'all rocking out with me for every Sunday. I don't think none of y'all missed the session, which I definitely appreciate. Um, I know we all have busy lives, but part of our lives as well is wanting more for ourselves and putting ourselves in positions to win. Again, this is why I started this series, Invest in Yourself. If you don't invest in yourself, no one else is. You got to take care of yourself first. And, once you start putting that energy into yourself, other people will see it naturally because the way you would just glow, the way you start moving about yourself. This series within itself, like as much as I thought it was for me to do for others, this was like a how-to menu for myself. And I think that's probably like the best part about it. Like me trying to teach what I know, I also learned a lot. And I'm happy about it, like going back into, relearning how to actually do my budget, going back and look at my credit again, seeing what I can change, what I can improve on. Am I living by what I'm actually saying, And then at the part where I feel I'm at now, which is, if you ever read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, he talks about like which side of the asset column you are, right? And I realized even though I have a business, I'm still self-employed, Like if I took 3 months off, literally right now, my business would not have no income. So how do I start positioning myself to where my business can operate without me? And so that's one thing I'm definitely looking at now, right? How to move from technically self-employed to being a business. And then from that, I want to generate income to where I can go into real estate, to where we can start purchasing assets. I've been working at Compass, there's a tech real estate company for 2.5 years. But honestly, I don't know shit about real estate. Like, and I'm more disappointed in myself because I'm not taking advantage of it, Regardless if they had the opportunity for me to do it or not. One thing about me, I know I could create it. So I think that's where I'm kind of at right now. I literally see, even though it's all volumes from different regions of the world, like my job brings in $1 billion in revenue, right? Not mean that's your take home, but the amount of volume they do, and they've been a company around for 8 years in real estate, you can't tell me there ain't no money in real estate, right? So how do we start learning the basics of it, right? So in this part of the class, we're going over, the basics of home ownership, but the financial aspect of it, right? The things, how do we start preparing ourselves for getting into that, all right, I'm ready to go into buy a home. This is not like a how-to for every step to go through for the home process. I think that's something we all would benefit from taking like a full course class. You definitely can find them like NACA. Can't tell you what it stands for, but like they have programs to where you can actually learn about home ownership. They actually dive in a little bit more on financial literacy. They help you through the process. So that way you're not in it alone, Purchasing a home is a very, very huge financial decision. And especially like me, it's just like, all right, I make X amount of dollars. I can afford this amount of home. All right, let me go do it, right? The APR is 2-3%. Let me lock in now. But the thing people are not telling us is what are the other costs that comes with it? What do you actually have to do to get yourself ready for it? They make it seem so easy. Oh yeah, you can just go to the bank and get the money. Is a process, and something most of us are not familiar with, but yet we think we're ready for it, right? So when do you start actually evaluating, like, all right, what goes into the home ownership process? Hold on, yes. Okay, just making sure. Someone was asking about getting into the session. So how do we start actually gathering that information so when it is actually time to go for a house, we have everything in a row, right? We're not trying to fix our credit knowing we're looking to buy a house within a year. You know, we want to start fixing our credit now, knowing 5 years from now, I want to buy a house. You know, we don't want to be so last minute to where I see it all the time. People's like, oh, how can I delete this off? Or how can I get this? So you're scrambling to get everything in order where if you start this now, which goes back to, you know, the first workshop, right? Knowing your budget, knowing your credit. If these are things you work on now, when it's actually time to go get the home, this is one less thing we have to worry about. If you have the business, you know, you start creating that extra income. So now you actually can start raising your debt to income ratio, right? Which allows you to actually have a higher purchasing power for your house. So these are all things, you know, we got to keep in mind when we're going for that, going to get a house, you know? Do any of you have any questions? And feel free just to ask, you know, how we communicate as always. All right, so home ownership, right? What is the point of owning the home? It's usually, you know, the home is a place to call your own, raise a family, build memories with friends, become part of the neighborhood or community. It also means meeting your personal financial goals and investing in the future. Um, you definitely see real estate, like people get rich off of it all the time, right? But how do we get in? And it goes back to just learning the basics, making sure you're in a strong financial position so where when it's time for you to go to make that purchase, all right, I have all of my ducks in a row financially. So are you actually ready to buy a home, right? So buying a home, it involves, you know, one, finding your property, securing financial, securing financing, unless you're, you know, a cash buyer. If you have the cash, perfect. You don't have to worry about the financing. Making an offer. The more cash you have, the better it is sometimes because that way you can sweeten the deal and you'll be able to lock in on the property. And another thing, you got to make sure you get a home inspections and then closing on the purchase. So definitely on closing of the purchase, this is like things I'm still learning myself, but this is where having that extra cash on hand, right? Sometimes the buyer may get hit with closing costs that you was not expecting. So how much capital do you actually have on hand? How much do you have in your savings? There's a lot of costs that do arise. So we want to make sure we put ourselves in a financial position to where we just don't spend all of our cash on hand just for first month, first month mortgage. And all right, I got enough to get me by to the second month, but I'm waiting on my next checks. So it's just like, all right, am I truly in a financial position to make this purchase? Because once again, it is a lifelong, you're talking a 30-year, either 30 or 15-year, you know? So either you're going to do that type of mortgage payment. So that's a long commitment. Hey, Mary Lou, how you doing? All right. So whatever like the first steps, right, to actually getting a home. I guess first, right? Where do you see yourself living, right? Um, Me preferably, I think I said LA. I would want to. That was pre-pandemic. Pandemic shut that down. That didn't happen. But it's like, you know, you got to start looking at locations. Me being single, I feel like I have different options from someone who would actually have a kid, right? You want to be in better communities where there's schools. Um, Maybe you're someone who don't drive. So maybe you actually need to be somewhere where there's close transit available for you to actually get to work, right? Are you going to be spending money on Ubers? Like there's certain things you have to look into. What's in your neighborhood, right? Do I have a home and you see it, especially based on the type of home you buy, you may not even have a washer and dryer in it, right? You may have a condo in the city where you don't even have a washer and dryer in it. So now you have to actually, all right, is there a washer and dryer close by? Like what amenities is actually in your location? What's close proximity to you? How far away is it? How close are your local grocery stores? You know, those are little things we got to factor in too. If you like to travel, how far is the airport from where you are? You know, living in New York, we know the airport parking is expensive, right? So does it make sense? Like, all right, can I actually take affordable cabs if I'm someone who travels, knowing based off where I live? Like these are just little things down the line you got to factor in as well. So it's just not the purchasing of a home. Location again, you got to think about property tax. Um, Living in Long Island versus living in Poconos, right? They're both probably equally an hour and a half away from New York City, but what are your taxes? What are your property taxes like? So what do you get in the location? You know, what amenities you may get? So that's like just definitely to keep in mind because of those amenities come added extra costs. Any questions? Another thing, if you're going into buying a mortgage, getting a mortgage, like everything else you want to do is literally on hold. You know, you do not want one to start spending money on because you never know what's going to rise in a home, right? So if you want to do any trips, any vacations, wedding here or there, you know, based on how big you're going, but you know, you don't want to do anything that's going to take away from you actually saving towards this down payment, or just having that pocket money for additional costs. There are programs out there where you can get, you know, 0% down, 3% down. I'm gonna just say, you know, do your research, see what's out there, because even up to certain down payments, you got to have 20%. So you want to be able to know comfortably, all right, I can't take a trip for 2 years because I'm saving for this house. So all those big ticket things may have to be put on hold. Like going into a home, you may know you need a washer and dryer, but that's something you know, all right, I got to put this on hold until after I close on the house, right? I don't want to put this on a credit card, even though I know I could pay it off, but we don't want to have nothing that's going to also affect like our debt to income ratio, which looks like you have more debt, which just, you know, reduces how much house you can afford. So try not to buy any big ticket items prior to closing on your home. Definitely want to hold off on that. Understanding your future budget, right? Um, how much can you comfortably spend? So we went back to actually showing what our budget is, understanding how to create our actual budget, you know, going over your expenses, going over your income, and actually looking, do you have a surplus or are you operating at a deficit? Now, with your future budget, right, we can play around with all these mortgage calculators, have a rough estimate like, all right, I know I want to put, you know, I know I can afford $300,000 of a house, right? Based on doing a mortgage calculator, understanding how much debt to income that I have. But what you also have to budget for is, all right, do I have to pay utilities now, right? Um, do I have to mow the lawn? Do I have to do snow removal? Is there HOA fees, right? Do I pay water bill? Some stuff that we may not be paying now, but we're only think of the mortgage number. So when you start creating this future budget, you actually want to plug those estimates in. You can go online. You can see what the average utility cost is for this neighborhood. You can call, I think there's a website, I can't remember it, but you can see roughly what someone is paying for their water bill, you know? That way you can start, all right, maybe this is what my consumption is, and start monitoring it so you can actually see, all right, this is how much extra I will be spending, and then start saving that. So you can actually understand, all right, if I know if I'm gonna move out right now and I'm paying $1,200 in rent, but if I go get this house with the utilities, all the extra maintenance, I'm gonna be paying $1,600, right? I should be able to be saving that extra difference of the 400 each month in my savings, because technically when I move over to this house, my new expense is $1,600 now. So my budget has to be operating already that, all right, Kevin, you're going to be spending more money. So if you can't do it prior and have it and save that money prior, you're probably not ready to jump into that financial commitment. And then things happen, right? Um, this is why it's great to have good credit. One, because you have a lower interest rate on your mortgage, right? So you want to pay less interest. If you're able to put more money down, put more money down. What that does is you may have a more manageable mortgage payment, which, so if something bad happened, like a pandemic, and say you lost your job and you have to move back home, you may be able to actually rent your apartment out and actually bring money in, right? Maybe you have to go back home, live with your parents, but you can turn that mortgage, which is, technically a liability, into a cash bringing in asset, until your financial situation turns around. So you don't want to have a mortgage where you're paying 2,300, but the average rent in the area is only 1,600, 1,700. No one's going to want to rent it out, so you'll definitely be taking a loss. So make sure your mortgage, what I say, is rentable, meaning someone's willing to pay this for rent. Like if I literally came into this, all right, I'm comfortably paying 2,300 and more, to cover your expenses, to make sure you're not, again, operating at a loss. And last one, right? Make sure we're not keeping up with the Joneses. Are we just getting a house because society says get a house? Oh, you should be 25, you should be 30 with your house, car, married, all of the stuff society says we should have. Same thing goes with a house, right? Make sure this is something you truly, truly want. It's easy to get tied up in a financial situation. This is a 15 to 30-year commitment. And it takes, what, I think 10 years to come off your credit report. So you don't want to have a foreclosure. It takes a while for you to actually go back and get another home after that. So you want to make sure you're not jumping into something just because of all the noise around you. It's so easy for us to do it. Like I have people like, oh, you have the job, Kev. You have decent credit. Like the APR is 3% right now. Like I don't see why you're not going to get a home. And I'm like, one, I don't know enough information, right? Like I know I can qualify. Like I have all of that stuff down pat. But am I ready for that financial commitment, right? Like those extra added costs. Even if I'm not even maintaining it and I rent it out, right? I don't know nothing about managing property. I don't know nothing about, all right, taking out trash or shoveling snow or making sure all of that's taken care of. So financially, yes, I'm in a position to, right? But mentally, I'm not there. Knowledge-wise, I'm not there. So making sure this is something you really want and you're just not pressured by outside influences. Any questions? All right, so obviously, we all want houses. So what steps, I would ask, where you're at now, right? And anyone can chime in on this. What steps do you feel you need to take to get you in position to, like, all right, maybe I want to get a house. All right, this is where I need to go. Yeah, I ain't gonna be mute now. Y'all was talking all past.
I think for me, I'm at the step where I reached out to like a banker because I want to find out the programs in my area for the first home buyers and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And also like my budget, like can I afford this, or like at first I was like, I want a house because you always want a house with a nice yard. But now I'm just thinking the maintenance and all of that stuff you have to upkeep, that takes so much money. I hear it from like family members and stuff, and I'm like, I don't want to do that. So I'm like looking into a condo. So but I'm just trying to get the finance information correct because it's something new. I don't really know.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else?
For me, I would say like I'm more on the earlier stages of like looking into houses. It's not really something on the top of my mind right now. But like I would definitely say like location, because everybody always asks, oh, would you want to stay in New York or move to another state? And I'm just like, oh, I'm like not really sure, but looking at the prices of the house and seeing what state would be best. And then also like deciding if, like, I know a lot of people do this, but deciding if you want just one family house or like a multi-family house. So let's say you have that family paying for your mortgage or whatever just by renting it out. So like just thinking about that and also just educating myself more, because I don't really know too much about buying a house and like what it entails. So
Mm.
just to make sure I know going into buying a house the basics. So let's say, I'm sure they won't do this, but the real estate agent, you never know, their job is to sell houses, so not get finessed into a house that you don't necessarily know too much about, or paying more for a house that you don't know too much about.
Yeah. They're supposed to have a fiduciary duty, to make sure they're
Oh,
not
okay.
this. They have a fiduciary duty, just like us accountants, we live by too.
Mhm.
Do you always follow it? No. So you definitely like to not get finesse. You want to date, right? You want to date your real estate agents. You just don't want to be like, all right, this is what I'm going with. You ask around, you get references, and just do your knowledge as well. Um, because you're younger too, there's never a right or wrong time one to get into real estate, right? But take advantage of being able to build your credit now and build into your savings. That way,
Right.
when you are ready and you do have like that steady income, and because usually they want to see 2 years of consistent income, so at
Mhm.
least you don't have to worry about, all right, I already know my credit is good, my credit A1, like I'm good to go. All I gotta do is get a couple coins in the bank, which you may or may not need based on if you get 0% down mortgage loan, based on who you go with. But work on what you could, So home
Mhm.
may not be in the near future, but at least get your credit right, get your savings right, work on that budget part. Those are things you can definitely tackle now. Um, yeah. Jamila, you wanted to add something? Okay, so
Um, for me, I think like my main goal isn't to just like buy the house. It's like keeping that house because I mean realistically, if you have the necessary, anybody could buy a house. However, like, can you keep that house? Like, are you going to be able to maintain that and still be able to live comfortably? So for me, it's just like Ariana said, um, gaining the knowledge that I need to know in the area of like homeowning, buying, the demographics, the taxes, just saying to myself like, do you still see yourself being here 5 years from now if you can't find anybody to rent? Like, are you still going to be comfortable? Are you going to be happy in this house? Because I think for me too, like I have to, like, it has to be a sense of happiness because your home is like your sanctuary. So if that place doesn't bring you peace, you now look for that somewhere else. So just to know, like, can I like survive in this for 15 years or, like the 30 years, whatever it is. So just knowing those things, like, I think all that stuff comes into like play first, but just having that financial aspect in order and then everything else will like align and fall into place.
also consider, right? Don't think of it as also a 15-year to 30-year commitment, right? Can I live here for 5 years, 3 years, 2 years until I'm ready to sell this? And will this property actually get equity in it to where I can make money and then I can put that extra money into something else, right? Am I willing to live in this neighborhood for 2 years because I know the value is going to shoot up? Or maybe I can just get into this investment now and then watch it shoot up? So maybe I can find me a tenant. So sometimes it doesn't even have to be for our personal living. Do you see the value in it as a business deal, right? Can I go get this mortgage for X amount of dollars, hopefully put less money into it and actually start generating income from it, right? Take all that extra money. Hopefully you get a property where there's no maintenance, right? You could probably end up selling it. Who knows what it will go up to. Real estate, even though it falls down sometimes, you look at it over the past 50 years, values are only going up. Like, it's only going up. It's just a matter of when do we want to get in? When will we get in, you know? And just make sure we got that right knowledge to make the right decision. Because you don't want to just jump in being thirsty and then, you know, like, all right, damn, I jumped in too soon. I can't handle all this extra payment. But, you know, have that strategy and just make sure what you see value coming into the community around it. You can just always tell by like the resources, but don't always think of it long-term for yourself. Because if it ain't for you, it's always for somebody, right? Someone's always want what you got already. So everyone wants what we got, and we always want what someone else has. So you can always get another buyer in. Just how
I think for me though, right now, it's just like producing that residual income that will allow me to live comfortable first. So like mastering that aspect and then going into like the home owning stage, because like I think that like once like mentally like I'm in a place where it's like, hey, I'm producing this income that like, and I love to like what I'm doing. So like later on, like it's not something that I'm feeling like, hey, you know, it's dragging and draining me, or just like working for other people. Like once you have that stability there and that discipline, then I think that like, you know, for me, home owning, like, or going into that aspect, like I would have the discipline that I need as far as like budgeting and, you know, the credit, and then just knowing like what I'm like, what I have available, like what I can spend, as far as like, you know, my bills and stuff like that, what I still like, what I'm allowed to like play with, like just again, like finding the discipline in that area first, and then just being able to transition and move into like the home owning and buying stage.
definitely. And there's nothing wrong with renting. People make it seem like, oh, you're throwing your money away because you're renting. Nah, there's extra expenses that come with it. I need to be comfortable
Yeah.
before. I want to make sure I got all these other things in place before I make that large commitment. Take your time. You know, it's definitely not a rush.
Yeah, I love that. It made sense, Jamila. That's great.
I just think like, I think when I was younger, I used to like look at things or just like pay attention to society, because I'm like really not that old. I'm only gonna be 30. However, it's old enough. When I was younger, I kind of felt like I look at other stuff, or I'd watch movies, right? And I'll say like, okay, like by the time I'm like, I guess 30, I should be married with a house and like maybe have a kid or two, front yard, backyard, just not realizing that like everybody's success is different and the timing is just different. So
Yeah.
like that's just your blessing in itself at that time. However, I'm not really lacking anything because I have all the things that I need and a lot of what I want. So it's just like my blessing is just a little different. So when I get there, like I'm not gonna struggle because I've took my time. Like I've had that growth, and that prepared me for that house that, you know, I want, and that marriage, and that, you know, the children, the front yard and the backyard. Like it took me time to get here, but I'm really going to be able to indulge and appreciate it because now I'm not struggling. Like I knew what I needed to do. Like I was telling you, like I lived in a 1-bedroom first, and I was like, okay, this is my first apartment. I'm going to take a 1-bedroom because like I want to see what it's like to just like have this responsibility. After being there for 5 years, I was like, you know what? I want to move, but I was like, I'm not moving to another 1-bedroom. Like, let me move to a 2-bedroom and like, let me know what it's like to have more space and like, you know, pay more rent. And at this place, like my first place, like I didn't have to pay like heat and hot water. At this place, I now have to pay like heat and hot water, which is like an extra bill. So I'm like, okay, cool, fine. It's preparing me for that house that I'm talking about, because soon, you know, once you get the house, you have to pay to get the lawn mowed, and you don't have a super at that point anymore. You are now going out and finding a plumber that you have to pay and things of that nature. So just kind of like preparing myself in that area. So now I'm saying, okay, I'm coming into 2 years at this 2-bedroom. I've been, like I told you, going back and forth to Florida, and I'm just kind of like, hey, Like, I know that this is an area that I really like. I know that I'm like really comfortable here. It's really settled. However, you think to yourself, like, when I make this transition, like, is it going to be a hard adjustment for me because it's a different lifestyle? So, like I said, going back and forth to Lakeland 2 and 3 times a year and staying for like a month at a time, it's like, okay, I could live here. Now, when you move here, are you just going to go straight into like buying a home, or are you going to rent first? Because again, it's different there. They have to pay for, even living in an apartment, you have to pay for your trash to be taken out. You have to pay for all these things. So I said, you know what? I am going to go into that stage first. I'm going to go and I'm going to rent, because I would now know what it's like to have to pay for my trash to be picked up, a parking spot, paying for water, just all of those things. And again, that would prepare me for that house that I keep talking about. So just kind of like taking the things one day at a time and not comparing my success to anybody else's puts me in a place where like I'm a lot more comfortable and I'm able to learn more.
Definitely feel you. I would probably be living in the dark, because I would not, the way I leave lights on in that electricity bill, that is something I know I would not plan for. Oh my God. And always leaving that water running.
No, yeah, me, it's the water. I have OCD really bad. So like, I run the water the whole entire time, like if I'm cooking. Um, if I'm cleaning, so I can be cleaning in the kitchen, in the bathroom, like probably all at the same time, but the water is running in both areas. So I could only imagine what my water bill is gonna look like. It's a struggle when I go down there and stay at my friend's house and I'm like cooking or cleaning. I have to be mindful, like, hey, this is not my house. I'm not paying the water bill here. So like, it's just ridiculous.
Definitely.
Water in Florida is terrible.
Yeah.
So that's an expense that I have in myself. I have to buy the big container of water for cooking. And then I buy the water for drinking. The water in Florida is no good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something I didn't even think of. Like,
Yeah, it's terrible. That's an expense, man.
oh, all right. Definitely got to prepare for all of those unknown variable costs too. They are definitely key. Some of them you won't know, some of them you do know, do your research. But again, that's why having a budget is crucial, right? When I have those extra funds into that emergency savings, so when you start actually learning about this, you're not getting hit by surprise. I think another major thing is just unexpected repair costs. Hurricane happens, God forbid, and a tree falls into your roof, right? Based on the type of property you have, you are liable for that. So we'll go into that part a little bit later. But like, what are like the different methods? I just want to touch on like the different methods of going into buying a home, which is, either cash, seller financing, or land contract. So that's when the seller actually finances the land to the buyer. You rarely see that, but definitely with that, you come with like higher, it's usually short term, and they have more like balloon payments at the end. And you have rent to own programs where you get the option of actually renting it to where you own it. You get the option of actually making the property yours. And the most conventional way is mortgage financing, going to a bank, actually getting a lender and having them pay the mortgage, and then you're paying the bank back. Again, I think you have, if you do mortgage financing, right, you usually have your FHA loans, you have your conventional loans, and what is the other one? I don't know if it's called just NACA in general, but you have it to where you have all of these NACA, I think, or veterans loans. That's the other one. NACA is just a type of loan you can get, but you have different ways to go about getting financing. Definitely look into what your options are. You definitely want to have like a mortgage lender walk you through that whole process. They're more qualified, definitely on that part. But that's part of getting the people that you actually need to go into that property. So when you're actually ready to get the home, having a mortgage mortgage, a loan agent walk you through that process. So for the mortgage, right, this goes actually back to our credit slide, right? This is exactly what are they making their decisions based off of. So this was actually on our slide, sorry, with the credit, right? So how are they actually making these decisions? Again, it goes off your character, your capacity, your capital, your collateral, and your conditions. The one I really want to focus on is your capacity. This one matters probably the most. So what is your capacity, right? Your capacity is how much debt you have in relation to your income, which goes back to your debt to income ratio. Ties all the way back to our budget, right? Understanding how much income you have coming in, how much income you have going out. Only thing they care about is things that have, there's certain types of debt. So your rent, they don't care about it. Your food bill, they don't care about it. What you spend on sneakers, they don't care about it, right? They only look at certain type of debts. And we'll go into that as well. So, but for income, right? So part of the ratio is your debt to income. So your income is, where's your income coming in from, right? So do you have stable employment or income? Do you have tax returns showing, all right, for the past 2 years, I've made X amount of dollars? Same thing with your business. They want to see that you had your business for 2 years consecutively before you can actually add it to your income. So don't think like, all right, I've been running my business for 1 year. I'm going to add this to how much I'm making. No, it has to be 2 years that you've been running this business, filing tax returns on it before they actually include it in your income. So make sure you have enough income to comfortably cover your mortgage while making any other debt payments. So your DTI can say, all right, you can afford $300,000 worth of house. Say, I don't know, your mortgage could be $1,500. Based on the DTI, you can probably afford it, right? But when you have all your other expenses, which is your food, your traveling, your trips, your savings account, and medical insurance, right? All of these other things, do you have enough money to pay all of that and still live comfortably, right? And still save? You don't want to have your mortgage up to your head to where it's like, all right, I'm working just to pay this mortgage. You're not supposed to live like that, you know? Not living to where we just working to pay our basic necessities. Make sure you can do this comfortably. If not, start looking at ways to generate more income, right? There's so many different ways we can create passive income, income to where you work, you know, but if you find yourself struggling, find ways to actually create more income for yourself. That way you can increase your capacity, you can increase your purchasing power. But again, you know, they want to see that track record of you've been making this amount for X amount of years. And then you have enough, do you have enough money to cover any maintenance, anything that pops up? If your hot water heater blows out, right? I think my sister had her hot water heater stop working. I think it was about like $10,000 or something for a new hot water heater. Luckily, my friend Stu worked at the plumbing company, so we got it installed on course. We got it purchased on course with delivery, and this was out of the city. Connections, right? Networking. But having that unexpected repair cost, just having that network saves her $3,000, right? And then having my friend who's a plumber come in and actually install it, right? So one, do you have extra money like that just laying around? You gotta have that extra money in your pocket or on your credit, somewhere available to actually say, all right, I'm not gonna be out here taking cold showers. I need to get a hot water heater in this house, right? So unexpected repairs like that, do you have the capacity to cover it if it arises, especially in your investment properties, right? You don't wanna get caught up with your hot water heater break-in, you don't fix it. We know for damn sure I ain't paying my rent if I ain't got no hot water. If I ain't got no heat, you ain't getting your rent money. Like, so now you stopping your money coming in because you didn't have enough cash to actually take care of that investment property. And we know the courts is always tenant friendly, right? So you want to make sure you have enough cash to keep either your household afloat or your investment property going. And that's just doing this research, you know, make sure you gain all this knowledge from various sources. Make sure you mentally prep yourself for all of the unknowns. Someone's been through it. All of these people that own homes, someone has been through it. There's some type of story out there, right? So just plan as much as you could for the unexpected. So what is like your list of qualifying income? Just, you know, you got a full-time job. Are you working on commissions? Any part-time jobs? If you own a business, make sure you file your taxes for 2 years for that. Do you have any alimony or child support or disability or social security? They actually count all of that as income and it goes to their DTI. Now, these are the debts they do care about that they actually do factor in. So your auto loans, they keep that in. Your student loans, they factor that in. I think your student loans is 1% of your total amount due. And that's the amount they actually add to your monthly DTI. Look into that a little bit more deeper. I don't know if that's exactly sure, the numbers or my calculation is right, but definitely it is a portion of your student loans payment added to your DTI. Any personal loans you have, that's included. Not your business loans. You know, the business loans, hopefully you took it out, that's assigned to your EIN number. So not any business loans, but the personal loans that you may have. Child support or alimony, that definitely would deduct, that would be a debt, right? So if you're paying it, it reduces your DTI. It adds to your debt and will reduce your purchasing power because you have that expense every month. Any minimum monthly payments on your credit cards and any existing mortgages that you may have already. You know, people have mortgages on other properties, so that's definitely factored as well. So the credit card is only, they factor in, I think, the minimum payment for each month. So if you could pay off all your credit cards before you go into owning a home. One, you just don't want to have any unnecessary debt going into a larger debt. And two, you always want to have your purchasing power higher. That way you have room to negotiate on certain properties, right? You know what your budget is and you know you have this flexibility now within your DTI to say, all right, maybe I only wanted to spend $220, but because I know I don't have this extra expense, I could probably go to $250, or say if you're in $300 to $400, you create the extra cushion where you could go above or, you know, even below. You actually understand that part of it. Any questions on that part? On, you know, just the understanding, all right, cleaning up my debt and understanding where my income comes from, right? Because they're literally taking your debt and your income, dividing it, and then they're multiplying it by 100. And that's what your DTI is, right? So you want to fall off, I don't know, I think it's, I forget the percentage, but there's definitely a percentage of your DTI, I think under 30%, you want to fall in. Some loans you can go up to 50%, but you'll definitely have like a higher APR. But you know, to lower your DTI, it also factors into what your APR is. So lower, you definitely want to have better credit, have increased purchasing power too. So clean up the debt that you do have or anything that you could before going into purchasing a home. Once you figure all your numbers out, now we're just figuring out what type of property you want, right? And it still ties back to somewhat of your expenses, right? So I'm only looking at the different type of properties you can have on the aspect of what will it additionally cost you, right? So we have single family homes where, you know, your pros are you get, you know, privacy, you get more space, hopefully.
Kevin, I have a question. I'm sorry. Before you go into that, um, what's the difference between a credit score and a FICO score? Do you know?
So, okay, let me give your FICO score is what your true credit score is. It's a scoring mechanism, right? So FICO is usually like, all right, we're going to use this score to, this is what your credit score is. But you can get a different type of credit score from Credit Karma, but they use a Vantage system. So both give you your credit score, but one is your FICO score that they actually go by. And then like Credit Karma uses your Vantage score, which is just another tool or another measurement that they're using to give you your credit score.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right. So like the different residential types, right? So even though you may get more privacy with a single family, you know, you can do do unlimited changes to it, right? If you want to add more into the house, change the whole front of it, you usually don't have to go through approval. But you do have more home maintenance costs, right? So as the homeowner, all of the cost falls on you. You're responsible for any upkeep of the property. Now, for your condos, right, you do have minimum responsibility. There is shared costs. So you usually pay a maintenance fee, and that will cover, you know, the cost of the building. Pros you may get is gyms, lounge areas, or actually a pool. So some buildings come with these amenities, but the cons to it, limited remodeling you can do, pet or rental restrictions. So again, you may not be able to sublease this apartment out as quickly if you fell on hard times. They may actually have to go through an approval process for you to actually rent it out to someone else. So financially, does that make sense? And other just cons, you actually share a wall with neighbors, right? So you have to be mindful of other people. You don't really so much with a single family home. You do get, you know, your own privacy with hopefully having your front yard, backyard, if you're not on top of somebody. Now, your townhouses, right? You do get, it's like a hybrid of privacy between your condo and your single family. So even though you are attached to another home, you do have more privacy than condo. Definitely more affordable than single family homes. And there are some HOA fees or joint maintenance. So definitely want to look into that and see what your HOA cover, right? So that may actually cover water, or it may cover just trash pickup. It may cover your parking spot. It may cover gym membership in the neighborhood. So see what actually goes into your HOAs for your townhouse community. Cons is, you know, there's limited shared amenities based on where you go, and then it's just not as private as a single family. Co-ops. And then we got multifamily and land, right? So if you do a co-op, this expense, right, it falls on the maintenance of the community. So every tenant is basically, y'all share the expense of the building. So you usually have lower homeowner association fees, and a portion of these fees is actually deductible on your taxes. So keep that in mind. A lot of these expenses, based on what you use the property for, you can also deduct it on your taxes. Talk to an accountant if you need one. But the cons, right? There's shared financial responsibility for the building of whole, and there's an interview process to actually be a part of this community. Usually, if one person is doing bad in the building, you know, you got to remember, as a unit, y'all are paying the mortgage of the building, you know? So any loose strings is not great for the community. So that's why they actually have an interview process, and they're very selective. You have everything in order, but sometimes you just get denied and you'll look great on paper. That's why like a lot of real estate agents will prep you for co-op interviews. One, because you know they want to close it, and two, they just know how picky it is. Just how it's just how the boards are. Multifamily homes. I think you touched on this earlier, Ariana, right? So these are great investment properties where you can purchase up to 4 units, and it's considered residential. Anything over 4 is considered commercial. But this is where you can live in 1 unit and have someone else paying the mortgage on the other side. A portion of it, at least a portion of it, you know, or majority of it, based on how much you're charging for rent, and you know what is the market rent in the neighborhood, how low is your mortgage. And this is great for multi-generational households, right? Some people, they don't want to live with their moms, but they need their moms close, right? You want to have, you're close to your family, but you need your privacy. We can live in the same unit. This whole unit is all of ours, right? But mom's got her own spot. Auntie got her own spot. Dad got his own spot. Your kid may have his own spot. Or you just may rent it out. But for multi-generational houses, is a great way to actually keep your family close by, but at the same time have your own privacy. It may not stop them from popping up if they're so close, but you know, it is definitely a great way. Like, all right, if all of us want a house and we're a tight-knit family, we can go get this together and pay this off quicker, you know? And then if we take it as an investment, we just paid this off in X amount. Now we probably got all this equity in it, right? Take that equity, sell this house, and then use that for a down payment on another 3 property, right? Another multifamily unit while renting all of those units out. So there's definitely different ways with multifamily you can make some money. You just gotta look into it, you know? Though I don't know all of them, but it's definitely a great way to bring in income while you're living there, or you just rent the whole thing out. Or, you know, if you're a family person, keep everyone together under the roof. It's like a hybrid between a single family and a condo. Again, because if it's your whole family, cool. The shared space, the shared backyard, the parking, it's all within 1 unit. If not, it's kind of like a townhouse too, because you still share a wall, but you still have your privacy. It just matters who you rent into. And with a multifamily home, you're either the tenant or the landlord. So you're either the one renting the other portion out, or you're paying rent to someone. So either way, being a tenant sucks, because you're not reaping no benefits. So yes, you do lose some of it. You don't have the extra cost. You don't got to go out and find a renter. But, you know, in the long run, you want to play the long game, right? And try to start creating income off these properties. Now, the last one is buying land, right? So buying land looks attractive. You can put whatever you want on the land. But the cons are usually you got to have larger down payments, right? This is where we've seen the option of a seller, what did I call it? Seller financing, right? So you see seller financing a lot on land purchases. So here we go. Usually, you know, you'll get larger down payments. People give the cash up front. All right, pay me the rest in, like the seller will create the financing terms. So they can make the rules up. You're not going through no banks, nothing like this. It's usually on the back end, you know? So their rules is different. So they definitely want either a larger a part down or they make it to where it's balloon payments because they want to get most of the cash, recoup most of the cash that they can. It's harder to get financing. And another thing to keep in mind, if you buy land that's not already set up, like you got to get the utilities set up. You got to get the plumbing ran to the house, electricity. So that requires permits. That's definitely additional funds. And based on where you live, that may take a year or two, you know, because there's a lot of local, what's the other word? I guess the grander scheme, local and state restrictions. I don't know if I'm using the right term, but you know, there's the permits. It's just not easy. It takes about, based on the type of permits, a year or two. So with buying land, definitely wanna. It's a long-term investment. Would definitely have some costs. So if you're doing land, you definitely want to have cash on hand. Any questions? So that is the end of the presentation. On the home buyers part, you know, just us discussing some financial things to plan for when you go into, you know, prepping yourself for a home. I do encourage each and every of you to, you know, go out and do more research, you know. Let me stop sharing. Do more research, learn what's out there. There's definitely a lot of programs. Like I said, I signed up for NACA recently. I heard like a lot of great things about it, but see what programs is out there, see what's available in your area, attend workshops. There's always free workshops. There's always free workshops on